We want students who are curious about learning the foundational skills of entrepreneurship while working on problems that matter. Students in the Hatchery interact with each other, staff, faculty, entrepreneurial experts, and mentors, and bring their own startup ideas to life. So we are planning currently for two scenarios, an in-person program with fingers tightly crossed, and we'll also have a contingency plan, in the event that we need to be remote again. But right now, it looks like all systems go for us to be in person in Wilbur Powerhouse this summer. Chris.
Yeah, so with the Hatchery, what does it actually look like to be in the Hatchery? So I'll ask Annie and Sahib a little bit about this, but I'll give you the overall first and then ask for their experience. So throughout this info session, we're going to rely pretty heavily on Annie and Sahib's experience, because what we're really looking for is, what did they get out of it, right? What did students who are alumni of the program get out of it? Why did they participate in the beginning? And then what did they actually learn and take away at the end of the program? And then be willing to donate their time back when they've got incredibly busy schedules. Seeing that Annie is a student athlete and has her Lehigh Loft game tomorrow for her swim meet. And Sahib is so busy that he's taking this from his car and committing his time from his car. So we appreciate that. So what does a week in the Hatchery look like? So it's a Monday through Friday program. So it's a 40-hour-a-week commitment. So it's full-time, you're all into the Hatchery when you sign up for that. So we don't allow you to take other courses or take jobs that conflict with that 9-to-5 schedule, 40 hours a week. It sounds a little bit harsh, but when we do that, it's because we've tested this for years. We're in 10 years, maybe close to 10 years of versions of this summer program existing. We've tried models that range in different timeframes and different flexibilities. And we found that one of the most important things about the program is forcing that commitment to focus on an idea, focus on the work, focus on the community that you have to be able to move those ideas forward. Because frankly, nobody gets that type of opportunity very often. Very rarely do we have a time frame in our life where we're able to just focus on one idea, one thing, commit to that idea and try and move that forward while you're surrounded by a group of people that are there to support you in moving that idea forward. So we found that 40 hours a week commitment to be really, really important for this program. So 40 hours a week, and then what happens in that week? So within that week, we'll have pretty much every week a combination of content sessions about new entrepreneurial topics, ideation topics, human-centered design concepts like the design thinking process. We'll have guest experts that come in. Those guest experts can range from founders of companies to hear their experience. It might be content experts on topics like intellectual property or legal issues, or it might be somebody that's just got an amazing personal story of how they're using their entrepreneurial mindset in an organization as opposed in a startup company of their own. So we'll have guests on a weekly basis. We have mentors throughout the program. So we will have some that are external mentors, so experts in the field that you're working in, or experts in the entrepreneurial process. And we also have an internal coaching staff where you'll get paired with an internal coach to be able to support you and move you through those concepts, depending on which track you're in. So in addition to those kind of content-oriented things and programmatic things, there's a lot of time to work on your ideas. So we recognize that ideas are fine, but for us, the most important thing is the execution of those ideas and the execution of the process. And so in order to execute on the process, we have to give you time to actually go and do the work. So every week, there's this combination of new topics and concepts, but then the ability to go execute on those topics and concepts, get feedback on that work, and move your ideas and your work forward throughout the summer. So I'd like to just ask Annie and Sahib about that weekly experience, right? What were good times, bad times, motivation challenges, but how you got through them, like whatever you want to share about what that week's experience was like, and in particular times where you really thought, this is something that I wouldn't have been able to get somewhere else, right? That it's different than an internship, or different, to show like what is different about this than other potential summer opportunities. So what comes to mind? Whoever would like to start, you can start, and then we'll flip into a few other items here.
Yeah, I'll go real quick. So initially I wanted to do the Hatchery because I was trying to continue an idea I had in Intro to Entrepreneurship. And going into it, I kind of already done like a little bit of the design thinking, been acquainted with like the process and everything. So it's more just like, how do I execute on it? And how do I stay motivated to actually work on it on my own time? I think those were like some of the harder things that I learned how to work through. I think what really helped was the fact that you can meet other people that are either looking to join teams or are already executing on their own things, and they're kind of working through those like roadblocks too. And so even though I was part of like the virtual version of the Hatchery, at first I didn't, I wasn't really comfortable just reaching out and saying like, hey, will you just sit on Zoom with me as I do work? But then later, I was reaching out to people consistently and like we would work on our ideas together. We would do interviews together, or just like ask questions with each other. And those were things that like really helped just kind of like progress through my idea. And I think that's mostly a brief overview of like kind of like the pros and the cons, or like the good and the bad.
So that's a great point about the cohort, right? And about the peer community that we have there. So within the program, we spend a lot of time trying to build a diverse cohort because we want a diversity of thought in this program. So this program is open to anyone, any student at Lehigh. You could be, a sophomore, you could be a rising sophomore, you could be a graduate student and applying into this, because we want a cohort of people that are motivated to move their ideas forward in the program, regardless of the idea stage that they have. So I think Sahib just dropped off the call because he's trying to do a tech. So I'll skip him for that question. We'll circle back with him in a minute there. So that leads me to another aspect of the program, which is the idea of tracks. So Annie mentioned that she came in with an idea from her Entrepreneurship 101 class that she wanted to continue to pursue. Other students will come in with ideas that are fully fleshed out, and they have prototypes and they have business models and they're looking to launch it. And other students will come in saying simply, I think entrepreneurship is cool, or I've heard about startups, or I've heard about this mindset, and I want to try it out, but I don't have my own idea. And so we have the ability to kind of work with students on that entire idea continuum. So for this summer, we're going to have 3 different tracks. The first track is the ideas track, so hatching ideas. So that's where you can come in with no idea at all, or just a napkin sketch idea, right? You don't have to have anything really developed on it, and you can have no idea at all except for a curiosity and a passion to try some of this stuff out over the summer. In that track, we'll walk through the ideation process, problem opportunity scanning. We'll do all sorts of different programming around how do you frame a problem, come up with creative ideas, build prototypes and tests, and understand if there's a customer in a marketplace that's interested in those concepts. So the next stage that we're offering is the enterprise track. And that's for those students who are coming in with a pretty well-developed idea. And we're going to pair them with direct mentors, industry mentors who have experience, who have expertise, and are going to work with you throughout the summer to move your idea forward. So either of those tracks, the goal is to come in with your idea at one stage or no idea at all and advance it forward. So that's why we can look at supporting students in this whole continuum, because it's not about everybody having to get to the exact same point. It's about taking wherever you're at in your entrepreneurial journey and being able to move you 5 steps forward, 10 steps forward, 20 steps forward in that journey. So the last track that we're offering this year is called Home Field Advantage. This is a track that's open specifically to student athletes. This is something that we didn't have when Annie participated in the program, but Annie would have been a great fit for this. So to accommodate some of the student athletes' scheduling conflicts over the summer, we have a track for students who are student athletes. We've found through a bunch of different conversations with athletics and through some of our own investigation that there's a lot of crossover between an athlete's mind and an entrepreneur's mind. The ability to be coached, the ability to have to receive feedback in a way that is to move them forward as opposed to a way that is critical. And a lot of the other kind of tenacity elements, competitive elements are aligned. So if you're a student athlete and you're interested in participating in this program, you can apply to the Home Field Advantage track, and we'll work with some of the athletics department to get scheduling alignments working and be a little bit more flexible in some of those constraints if you're interested in that track. So welcome back, Sahib. I'm going to circle back to you with the same question as before. If you remember, what about the Hatchery kind of week-to-week experience worked for you over the summer?
Sure. Sorry about that, everyone. My phone overheated. But so to answer your question, contrary to Annie, I came into the hatchery with no experience with entrepreneurship, no real idea that I've worked on. When I applied for the hatchery, I did have some idea of what, like an idea that I'd like to implement, but that's not the idea or project that I ended up doing with the hatchery. So in comparison to that, so Annie spent her time, kind of like how Chris mentioned, that she worked with Chris and her other peers in implementing her idea. For me, it was more so learning about design, learning the basics of design thinking, working with Renee and Lisa Getzler-Lynn, who I don't think she's on this call, but working with them and maintaining a growth mindset, learning elements of design thinking, working with my group and creating something virtually or thinking outside the box, things of that sort. And contrary to a class where you would have to learn things, sort of by taking notes or reading, this was much better for me because I learned by doing. And I would say that, I'm sure Annie would agree with this, that this is sort of how entrepreneurship is. You learn by doing. You can't just theory. Not everything goes to plan. Not everything goes right your first time. So I have to go back again and again. I kept even in my project. Mine was called Tech Teacher. It was a just for context, it was a software. I was trying to make it a software as a service platform to help users sort of learn about technology, how they can be more technologically literate. My initial idea didn't work. I put a survey out. People weren't really interested in that. So then I had to think, what went wrong? How could I make this work better? And if ever I hit a road bump or I didn't know where to get started, I would always talk to Lisa, or I would talk to Renee, or I would talk to Chris, and they'd help me get started or help me narrow down my idea, things of that sort. So overall, I would say the hatchery was it was a really important part of my whole Lehigh career because it set off my involvement with Baker, and it got me more professionally involved in things that I don't think I would have been involved with otherwise.
Excellent. So a couple just themes that have come up in both your conversation and Annie's is that idea that you don't have to be perfect. Right? You don't have to know coming in exactly what you want to do or know exactly how you're going to go do it. So in entrepreneurship, there's a common saying that is fail early and often, and celebrate failure. And so those two concepts we tweak a little bit, where what we really try and do is celebrate persistence, right? So if the tech platform that Sahib just mentioned was something that he sent out a survey, he talked to some customers, and he realized it was a bad idea, and he stopped working on it. I'd say, that's a failure, right? Don't celebrate that. He's just stopped at the first no. But the fact that he persisted on that, he kept taking that feedback, not looking at it as criticism, but utilizing that feedback to identify where the opportunities actually are, and then focusing the project around that is where we look to celebrate. So in this program, it's about trying these things out, being experimental, try an idea out, talk to customers, see what works, see what doesn't work, tweak the idea, take a step forward, take 7 steps back, jump 8 steps forward, right? It's a process of iteration that allows us to move forward. And so the second point that you made there is that like hands-on nature, right? So there's not homework assignments that you're doing in this program. It's not a course. There's no grades that are delivered at the end of the program, right? Our goal is to allow you to learn about these concepts and apply them in the ways that make sense for you and your project. So with that in mind, these were experiences that you just heard that were in the virtual environment. So you can imagine when we're in person, we're able to deliver those hands-on experiences even more. But even if it's virtual, we're able to deliver a hands-on experience in the virtual environment because of the type of content and the type of programming that we're looking to develop here. So with all that said, we are going to have time for questions at the end of this info session. So we're going to get into a few other kind of application process and program dates elements, and then we'll jump into some questions. So Renee, back to you.
So the dates of the program for the hatchery for 2022 are May 24th, which is the kickoff, through July 1st. So it's squarely in the first summer session, and we do that intentionally so that you can use the second summer session to take advantage of other opportunities. June 30th, the day before the final wrap-up day, is what we call demo day, and that's your opportunity to really showcase the work that you've done in the weeks that you spent in the hatchery. So that's sort of our celebration day. You'll have Memorial Day off, which is May 31st, of course. In terms of the cost of the program, good news, there is no cost to participate in the hatchery. If you are a student with demonstrated financial need, there is a cost of living stipend that would be available to you depending on your level of need. And so we can answer questions about that later, or in the chat, or you can email me afterwards if you want to talk about specific levels. So there is while there is no cost to participate, students who don't successfully complete the program will lose the benefit of that cost of living grant, and then would be charged a $500 non-completion fee. So if you don't complete the program, there is a fee associated with it, but as long as you complete the program successfully, there's no cost. You have the ability to enroll in summer coursework or work after 5 p.m. as well, on weekdays or on weekends. So if you have a summer job that you want to keep or a course that you want to enroll in, you can certainly do that after 5 p.m. As long as there's no conflict with the work that you're doing in the hatchery, you're certainly welcome to do that. Chris, how about dates and the process of the application that we follow?
Yep. So fairly often we are asked, what do we actually look for in application? So we're preemptively answering that question. So what does the application process look like? What are we looking for in these applications? Why did we select Annie and Sahib as students in this program and others like them? So for the application process, we have 2 application deadlines this year. We know some students look for opportunities starting now for the summer, and others won't be looking for those opportunities until next semester. So we do have an early decision application deadline. All of these dates can be found online, but for reference, there's an early December application deadline in early December for early decision, and then there's a regular decision that will happen in the spring. All of those dates and details are online. I don't want to give you all the specific details because they're all online, and that's the most updated place with the specific information for timing. We are pretty serious about those timings though, so don't submit a late application because you will be rejected. One of the things we look for is professionalism in the applications. And so one of the first criteria to that is, can you follow a deadline? It's simple instruction. If you can't follow a deadline for applying to a program like this, then you're probably not ready to compete and be an applicant along with the others. So pay attention to those deadlines, submit things on time, ask questions in advance, and we're happy to answer those as long as they're in advance of those deadlines. So what does the application actually look like, and what's that process like? So the application is a written application to start. It is just a Google form. There's a series of questions that range from just basic information about yourself all the way through some other information about if you have a project, and if you do have a project, some details on that project. The most important thing though about the application, most important thing, is there's a question that's going to be related to what do you hope to get from the experience of the hatchery, and what do you think you can contribute to the hatchery? That question is going to be is in the application, and it's just set up where you can answer in 2 ways. You can either write a 500-word essay, or if you prefer spoken word over essays, you can record a 3-minute, up to 3-minute selfie video. It doesn't have to be produced. It can just be recorded on Zoom or on your phone. But we want to make sure that anybody, if you're not good at writing, you don't feel like you're good at writing, but you feel like you're good at speaking, great, submit a video. There's no judgment on one is preferred over the other. It's simply an option for you. What we really care about though is understanding what you want to get out of this program and what you think you can contribute to the program. Because as we mentioned, and as Annie highlighted especially, that community of students is something we really look for. So we want to make sure that for each student that we're bringing in, they're able to contribute something to that community, right? Whether that's simply a willingness to provide feedback, a willingness to hold each other accountable, a desire to be committed to a program like this, a particular talent or skill that you have that you think might be able to influence others in the program. So that's going to be a really important question. So some students in the program, not all, some students will be asked for some follow-on information and possibly an interview. That will depend on the applications that we get. So some students will have an interview, not all will. And then from that, we'll have a round of acceptances that come out for those early decisions. And then we'll have a round of acceptances that come out in the spring for the regular decision. An important note is if you apply for the early decision, but you're not chosen for the early decision, you will have the option to have your application rolled over to be reconsidered in the spring with the regular admission. So just like in many college application processes, it's mirrored to that. So if you're excited about the program and you want the best shot at getting in, apply early decision. That gives you the longest amount of time for us to consider and look at the cohort and understand who's applying into this program. So that's the broad application process. The application is now live, so it's on the Hatchery website, on the Baker Institute's site, and you can find that application there. You can click through it, you can read the questions, and you can submit starting today for that application. I think we are at the end of kind of our prepared information here. So Renee is going to open up the Q&A in the chat. So if anybody has questions, you're welcome to put questions into the chat. And while students are thinking about questions in the chat and other items that we might need to talk about, I'm going to turn it back over to Annie and Sahib to talk through your biggest takeaways from your Hatchery experience. So looking back and saying, what's the biggest takeaway, one or two things that you reflect on, and you say, you know, this is something that's affecting my life, or that I think about, or is kind of that memento of information or experience that you're taking with you?
I think I have something. I think it's the graph that you drew that's like progress is like a back and forth but forward line. And I think like you would draft like how I thought, and it was more of just like you're over here and you keep spiraling into like deeper into this like one point instead of like pivoting or moving. And I think like the idea that like it's okay if you change tracks, or not even, it can be the same track, it's just it looks different, or like you're exploring a different option, and then you'll eventually like pop back over to maybe what you were initially thinking, and then you'll kind of like wiggle until you find where you're supposed to go. And I think that was probably the biggest thing that I learned, was like afterwards, I wish I had taken more chances to explore different ways to solve the problem that I was trying to solve.
Wonderful. So other context to that. So this is a topic that sometimes isn't talked about much in entrepreneurship. So one thing that's important with the Hatchery is we'll talk about topics that are about entrepreneurship. We'll talk about topics that are about design thinking. We'll talk about some topics that are simply about your life and how you think, right? And how you want to pursue your life. And so what Annie just mentioned is something that's around execution and how people execute on ideas. And so we've got one starting point, right? This little dot on the bottom, and then some goal up top. And that goal could be a product that you're trying to develop, a job you're trying to get. Doesn't really matter what the goal is, but you've got a starting point and a goal. And we all know that the fastest way to get from this starting point to your goal is a dead straight line. But we also know that that is fundamentally impossible and will never happen in anything entrepreneurial or anything that requires any amount of risk. Because a straight line is just so hard. You can't just step out and say, you know what? I have this vision for this product and it's going to go perfectly. And I'm just going to walk straight to that line and get that product out into the world. And so what Annie was mentioning is there's like 5 or 10 different patterns at which you can get to that goal. And there's a lot of different ways that you can navigate based on your personal style and how many risks you take and how do you execute on ideas, but still stay tracked and focused on the goal at the end of the day. So thrilled to hear that. That's one of your takeaways, something that I really believe in, and something that I think is quite important for people to be able to understand about themselves and their own work styles. All right, you are up, Sahib.
Sure. So for me, one takeaway was to not constrain myself, especially like when coming up with an idea on what to do. I found that originally before I came in, I was very analytical. I used to overthink everything. I used to sort of constrain myself. But after some sessions with Chris and with Renee and some of the activities that we did together, I've learned to think a little bit more outside the box, think a little bit more, I don't want to say crazily, but unrealistically, and then narrow it down from there. So that was very helpful, and I continue to do that today, whether it's like for my club or whether it's like a project for school or for anything of the sort. And then another thing that I learned to take away was that this mindset that you gain from doing the Hatchery, that can be applied for anything. It's not just for whether you're an engineering major, it's not just for whether you're a business major, but it's relevant in all fields. And I've seen that happen with some of my friends who were in the hatchery. They're involved with photography. They came up with a new idea for their club, and they've been implementing it. It worked out pretty well for them, and just things of that sort. So it's not, this mindset's not limited to anyone of any major. It's available to everyone from any background at all.
Excellent. So definitely we want students from all different backgrounds. My classic example of this is I'm a mechanical engineer. And if you asked me to go redesign a car, I would have a lot of constraints already built in, because I already know, like, well, that car has to have a fuel injector, and it has to have disc brakes, and it has to have this feature and this feature and this feature, because I know that's how a car works. And so if I'm actually trying to be creative and innovative around designing a new car, I want to bring somebody in who's never opened the hood of a car before. And I would say, let's together brainstorm on this topic, because you're shy about saying crazy ideas. I am all for you saying crazy ideas, right? We want crazy ideas. We want those ridiculous ideas, those ideas that are completely impossible, to push us outside of what's standardly thought of. And then we can scale those crazy ideas back a little bit. And that's where we get innovative ideas, right? We go extreme, we go crazy, we go wild. We think about things that sound so dumb coming out of our mouths that we can then start thinking about how extreme those ideas are and say, well, what if we just scaled it back a little bit? That would be a totally new way of addressing this problem, solving this industry, changing the way these customers behave. And that's where that innovation comes around. So I love that you're comfortable doing that now in other spaces. And I think that's an important thing to think about. So as an outcome to the hatchery, we don't expect, and frankly, we do not want, every student that graduates from the hatchery to go be a startup founder. Many people at the end of the program will say, you know what, I love this way of thinking, but I do not want to be a founder. Or I love this way of thinking and I want to apply it in an organization, and I want to be a founder after I've worked in industry for a little bit. Somebody else might say, you know what, I really love the idea of working at a startup, but I don't really love the idea of taking on that responsibility. So I want to go work at a startup and apply my mindset and the way in which I think and work in this type of culture, but not with the risks associated with being the founder, right? So we don't have a predetermined, everybody has to be a founder by the end. What we really want is by the end of the program for you to have the choice to say, I want to continue with this project, or I want to be a founder, but not with the project I worked on. I want to apply that to a new topic. Or in Annie's case, Annie has joined another team and is helping another team with their project and helping them move forward and taking her critical skills here and being able to apply it to a team that didn't have those skills. And so that is a wonderful way of being able to move forward with this type of work, but not having to be the only one responsible for executing on the full idea. So regardless of the outcome, the mindset that you have is a critical talent, experience, thing that you can add to your resume. We've heard from dozens and dozens and dozens of students that when they go and interview for internships or interview for jobs, that the hatchery is the primary thing that they talk about. Their hatchery experience, because it's experience. It's something that they can talk through, and employers are so curious to know, what is this thing? How it's different than other things on other people's resumes. You've worked on this problem. You had to talk to customers. You had to experience this ideation. And those skills are very, very transferable to industry if you choose to go to industry, as opposed to taking a route where you're starting your own company. So that's going to be my last question to the two of you, is about kind of, I know this is an intimidating question, so I'm sorry for putting you on the spot here, but when you're looking in your future, right? If you had to say, there's some element about the hatchery that I want involved in a future career, whether it's a way in which you think, or a culture in which you're involved in, or a way in which you want to impact the world, right? In your future, what's something about the hatchery experience that you're saying, I want to keep this part in my life somehow, this aspect of the culture, the thought process, the experience, I want to keep that and embed that into my future career in some way. What comes to mind?
I would say specifically like non-judgmental collaboration. I think like when you're saying ideas out loud that aren't, they're not your best. They might be totally wild. They might be completely wrong. But like the idea that you can say things to a group of people and then have them be like either worked off of or taken in, but saying like, okay, I see where you're going, but this, like something that's not just non-judgmental in nature. And then also I think I found that I really just loved working with people, and finding others who balanced out the things that I wasn't good at, was just made it so much better. Cause I think you don't really get a chance to like work with other people. And if you are in group projects in college or in high school, it's not like you're really paired based on your strengths. It's just like out of convenience. So I think that is probably what I would take away from the Hatchery and what I look for when I'm like interviewing with places, or what I found in my internship, and that like I find very valuable.
Beautiful. And I have 100% and full confidence that you are either going to find that culture, or more likely you're going to get somewhere that doesn't have that culture. And I have complete confidence that you are going to then create that culture within that team and allow that to happen and make that culture, the appropriate one for better ideation and better creativity and a better culture to move ideas forward in the world. So glad to hear that's your area.
So for me, one thing that I would definitely keep with me is knowing how to think. Based on the design thinking process, who is the user, and then what is the problem, and how those two relate to each other, how you can get from one to the other. That's something that's been very helpful, something that I'm still kind of working on, but I know that once I do fully master it, I think it'll be very beneficial in whatever career path I go into. I was thinking consulting, especially, this comes in very handy because you're able to help someone, you're able to provide an outside perspective, and you're able to help them think as well. So that's something that I can see myself definitely keeping with me from the Hatchery, and something I still practice right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that is so critically needed in industry, is the ability to step back from that ideation, because ideas are the fun and shiny, let's do a brainstorming session and have lots of post-it notes up on the wall, right? But the ability to step back from that and say, before we do that, let's really make sure we empathize with our users. We understand our customers. We understand what their problem needs and desires are. We frame a problem that's actually appropriate to ideate on, instead of just jumping right to ideation. So framing a problem is something that we spend a lot of time on in the Hatchery, because small tweaks in how you frame that problem and who your user and customer are can create dramatic effects on where that idea goes and where that venture can go in the future. So framing problems sounds easy, but is actually an incredibly difficult skill that takes a lot of time to practice and hone. But once you can do that, there is not an industry that I know of that does not experience the need for being able to frame a problem appropriately so that ideation and innovation can happen as a result. So absolutely a fundamental skill that you're taking with you, that can absolutely be applied in consulting, or frankly, any other industry that you choose to move forward in after Lehigh. All right. On to a few questions. I think we have a question.
Chris, there was a question about types of projects that have been done in the past in the Hatchery, and then I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit just briefly about what it's like to work in Wilbur Powerhouse for the program.
Absolutely. So I'll start with projects. So we have absolutely no constraints other than what the rules and procedures of the university are on project constraints. So you can't work on things that are related to weapons or drugs and alcohol, right? Those are university policies. We're not allowed to support projects within that. Other than that, we've supported basically every type of project you can imagine. So we're industry agnostic, which means that we do not care what industry you're coming from, what industry you care about. So we've worked on projects that are nonprofits for water quality, all the way through for-profit entities on car exhaust systems, right? So it does not matter. Physical products, software products, service-oriented businesses, financial tech businesses, app-oriented companies, problems that are tackling global issues, problems that are tackling local issues. It does not matter in our program. regardless of the project area that you're working on, it's the same fundamental process that you've heard alluded to multiple times today. You start with understanding who's affected by the problem. Who are the customers, end users, and stakeholders? Who experiences this problem? Then you define exactly what those people are experiencing. So what is that problem? What is the thing that's going on there? What's the thing that is not satisfied by the current solutions that exist in the world today? Then you move into ideation. What ideas can you come up with that are wild and crazy and different to address that problem? We do idea selection based on the needs of our customers and end users. And then we move into prototyping and testing those ideas. Let's try them out. Let's build a prototype. If you're doing a physical company, it might be a physical prototype. It might also be a digital prototype. It might also be an experiential prototype, right? We've had students in the hatchery that go around, and we had one team that used the basement of Wilbur Powerhouse as an example for Wilbur Powerhouse. They set up tables and chairs. They blocked out with some tape measures and some tape on the floor a simulated greenhouse space, because what they were trying to understand is, can we create greenhouses in shipping containers and put them in areas to be that are typically non-conforming to growing food crops, put them in areas and then be able to grow food crops in these areas, in these containers. And they were trying to understand, how physically can we fit into this space? How would plants fit in here? How would a person walk around? Would you be able to fit in and actually do the crop maintenance? How would technology fit in there? And the simplest prototype that taught so much went down to the basement of Wilbur Powerhouse, put some tape on the floor, moved some tables and chairs around to simulate the walls, and then asked people to walk through and perform certain tasks. And all of a sudden, it became very clear how orientations of plants and equipment and space and two people being in there and harvesting, how all of those items would work. So it doesn't matter which project you're on, that same process works and applies to the project area that you're thinking about. So we have some examples of past projects on the Baker Institute website on the Hatchery page, and you're welcome to look there. And we have many of those projects that have continued on beyond the program, and many that just last the length of the program, and then people take away their experience as opposed to a particular product or service company at the end of the day. So on to Wilbur. I alluded to Wilbur, the Wilbur Powerhouse. The Wilbur Powerhouse is a phenomenal resource and home for the hatchery over the summer. It's on campus, a building that some students may know about, but many students kind of don't know exists. And then they walk in and they go, wait a second, I can use this stuff? I can be in here? I can do projects in here? The answer is yes, right? And over the summer, we have dedicated space in there. And that building is set up for this type of learning. It is set up for experiential learning. All the tables and chairs are on wheels. We reconfigure space. We reconfigure how we're sitting, how we're building community in there, how we're interacting with each other in that space. The building is filled with prototyping and testing equipment. There are $1 million printers, 3D printers in there that print metal, and there's $100 printers in there that print plastic, right? There's computers upstairs where you can design and build physical products on the CAD softwares that are all preloaded onto all of those computers. You can print them out downstairs. You can head to the machine shop at the end of the hall and do post-processing on those or create other items from scrap. There's laser cutters. There's all sorts of prototyping equipment available. The Baker Institute has things like a prototyping cart. It's really simple. It's sitting right next to Renee in her office. And it's really simple. It's just got cardboard and scissors and paper and markers and Post-it notes just to be able to hack together ideas. Because what we want to be able to happen, exactly, there's that prototype cart in the corner there, right? What we want to be able to happen is you show up to that space and you are surrounded by people and things that allow you to be creative and innovative while there. We do not want the space or the people or the community to be limiting that. We want that to add to it, right? So unlike going to a classroom where you might have bolted down tables and bolted down chairs and you only look at the one person in front of the room who's delivering you some lecture that day, the Hatchery experience is not at all that, right? It is about being able to change and modify the experience based on what's needed for that day. And the Wilbur Powerhouse physical space is a phenomenal resource for this program. to have access to over the summer, because it allows us to have the space that reflects the style and culture of the program and the people within that program. So Wilbur is a phenomenal space. We are so thrilled to be able to use it, and that'll be our home base. It's also nice because there's just like couches and stuff. So very often when we're in person, it's really nice that I get to just sit on a couch and have a cup of coffee and talk about ideas with you, right? We all get to have that type of interaction. It's not all these formal interactions where it's in a classroom environment, right? It can be these casual conversations. We play a game of chess, we talk about your idea, we talk about what's going on, we figure out what next steps, we bring somebody else in who happens to be walking by and add to that idea. So Wilbur Powerhouse is great. Projects can come from any space around any industry that you can think of, and we will help you walk through that process if you do not have a project already. Again, I'll just reemphasize that you do not need to have an idea coming in, and there is no benefit in your application if you apply with an idea or without an idea. That is not something that we look at in terms of who gets into the program. We're looking primarily at that essay, and then if you have a project or not just simply determines which track we place you in, as opposed to if you get into the program or not. So don't try and come up with a project just so you have one to apply. If it's not something that you genuinely care about and something that you genuinely have been working on, just come in and apply without an idea. It's perfectly acceptable, no harm or foul, and no judgment if you have an idea or not for the application. Any other thoughts, questions, concerns? Annie or Sahib, any other thoughts you want to add? Things that I didn't touch on, things that Renee didn't touch on, things that we haven't discussed but are important?
I would just say if you're able to apply for this program, like you know that you'll be available for the summer, I would say definitely go for it. You don't have anything to lose. And if you get in, I'm sure that you will definitely learn something. You'll definitely take something away, and you won't be losing anything for certain.
Thanks.
Thank you, Annie and Sahib. Thanks for joining us and sharing your thoughts today. I think we're gonna probably wrap up.
Yep, I have one last thing. So one kind of cultural thing that we do in the hatchery, which we're going to do an example of right now, is we typically end sessions with appreciations. And so I'm just going to do a quick appreciation for Annie and Sahib about some specific things about them. So I'll start with you, Sahib. I genuinely appreciate your commitment and your persistence through failure, right? There have been many times where I've sat with you and said, like, I don't think this is going to work for these reasons based on the rationale you're providing. And then you just keep coming back. You come back the next week. Well, what about this? And how about this? Right? And how about this thing? Right? And whether you're continuing that project or not does not matter to me. That ability to just be persistent in using these concepts in whatever area you're involved in is truly impressive. So I appreciate that persistence throughout. Annie, my appreciation for you is that we haven't seen each other in like a year probably. And it's like, you're just so enjoyable to spend time with, right? It's like we get on a call and it's just like, oh yeah, I miss spending time with Annie, because although you are so busy and you're so committed to all these things, you just have this ability to affect culture in this positive way, right? And so again, I think in the future, your ability to affect culture in other organizations is going to be phenomenal. And I envy that about you, that you can come in and you can affect the people around you in this incredibly positive way where people just want to open up and want to be better and want to participate and want to engage. And you did that in the hatchery with other students. You do that in the teams you work on now. And I miss having that around on a regular basis. So thank you both for spending the time with us today. And if anybody has any other questions for us or for Annie and Sahib, they've put their contact information in the chat, and we can also be found at any time on the Baker Institute's website, and our contact information is there. So feel free to reach out with other questions or concerns as needed.
All the dates and everything that we've covered in this info session are available on the website. Just as a reminder, early decision applications are due December 3rd at noon, and second round application due date is January 28th.
Beautiful. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Happy
everyone.
Lehigh Laugh, and good luck with the rest of your semesters. See ya.
Bye.